Hi, friends. I want you to close your eyes for a moment. Just for a moment, I want you to think about the last time you felt truly at peace. Not happy, not excited, not successful, at peace. That deep, quiet, unshakable stillness inside your chest where the world could be falling apart around you. And somehow, you were okay. You were more than okay. You were whole. When was that moment for you? For some of you, it was years ago. For some of you, it was this morning. And for some of you, and I say this with all the love in my heart, you are sitting here today and you cannot remember a single moment in your recent life where you felt truly, genuinely, deeply at peace. And if that's you, I need you to hear me right now. You are not broken. You are not too far gone. You are not a failure. You are not less than. You are simply a human being who has been living without the tools. And today, we are going to talk about three tools that have been available to every human being on this planet for over 2,500 years. The three practices that monks have used in mountain pools, three disciplines that warriors have used on battlefields, three habits that ordinary people just like you and me, have used to completely transform their lives from the inside out. We are talking about three main Buddhist practices. Sound. And before you think, oh, this is going to be a religious talk, let me stop you right there. This is not about religion. This is not about converting you to anything. This is not about asking you to shave your head or wear robes or sit cross-legged in a cave for 40 days. This is about your life, your suffering, your freedom, your potential, and the ancient wisdom that cuts straight through all the noise of the modern world and speaks directly to your soul. So open your eyes. Look around you. You are here for a reason. And I believe, with everything I am, that the reason you showed up today is because some part of you, some deep and knowing part of you, already understands that the way you have been living is not the way you were meant to live. Let me tell you a story. There was a young man. Let's call him David. David grew up in a small town. His parents worked hard. They were not wealthy, but they were not starving. David was smart. David had dreams. He wanted to be somebody. He wanted to prove to the world, and maybe more importantly, to himself, that he was worth something, that he mattered. And so David did what most of us do. He chased grades, he chased titles, he chased money, he chased relationships, he chased validation on social media. He chased the next achievement, the next promotion, the next milestone, always thinking, always believing, always hoping that when he got there, when he finally arrived at that destination, he would finally feel it. That peace, that wholeness, that sense of being enough. But here is what happened to David. And maybe this sounds familiar to you. Every time David got what he was chasing, something strange happened. The feeling lasted about 3 days, maybe a week, and then it evaporated like morning mist, and suddenly he was hungry again, restless again, anxious again, reaching again. And over the years, the chasing got faster, and the peace got shorter, and the emptiness got louder. Until one day, David sat in his car in the parking lot of his office. He had a good job, a nice apartment, people who loved him, and he had a panic attack so severe he thought he was dying. And as he sat there gripping the steering wheel, hyperventilating, tears streaming down his face, he had one thought. He thought, what is wrong with me? I am going to let you in on a secret. There was nothing wrong with David. David was doing exactly what his culture had trained him to do, exactly what television had taught him, exactly what social media had programmed him to believe. David was chasing happiness in the future. David had been taught that peace is a destination, that contentment is a reward, that you earn your right to feel good by achieving enough. And Buddhism, this ancient, wise, magnificent tradition, Buddhism looks at that belief and says gently but firmly, that is the source of your suffering. The word in Buddhist teaching is dukkha. It is often translated as suffering, but that translation is incomplete. Dukkha is not just pain. Dukkha is the deep, pervasive, aching sense of unsatisfactoriness that comes from trying to hold on to things that are constantly changing. It is the suffering of impermanence. It is the suffering of clinging. It is the suffering of building your house on sand and being surprised when the tide comes in. And every single one of us knows this feeling. Every single one of us has been David in that parking lot. Maybe not literally, but emotionally, spiritually. We have all had our parking lot moment. We have all felt that terrifying gap between what we have and what we thought we needed. between where we are and where we thought we would be by now, between the person we are and the person we promised ourselves we would become. And so we do one of two things. We either push harder, we chase faster, we work longer, we scroll more, we numb ourselves with food or alcohol or endless entertainment, or we collapse, we give up. We tell ourselves the story that this is just how life is. That peace is for monks. That joy is for other people. That we are somehow fundamentally, irreparably not enough. Both of those responses are wrong. And tonight, right now, I want to show you a third way. The Buddha was not a god. I want you to remember that. He was a man, a human being. His name was Siddhartha Gautama, and he was born into a royal family in what is now Nepal, roughly 500 years before the birth of Christ. He had everything the world said would make him happy. He had wealth. He had wealth. He had a beautiful wife. He had a son. He had a palace with gardens and servants and every luxury imaginable. His father literally built walls around the palace to keep suffering out, to keep him from seeing the pain of the world. But one day Siddhartha left the palace, and for the first time in his life, he saw a sick man. Then he saw an old man. Then he saw a corpse. And this is the moment that changed everything. He saw a wandering monk sitting in absolute stillness and radiant peace in the middle of all this suffering and chaos. And Siddhartha thought, that is what I want. Not the palace, not the power, not the gold, that peace, that unshakable, undeniable, unconquerable peace. And so he gave it all up. He walked away from the palace. He tried extreme asceticism. He starved himself. He tortured his body. He pushed himself to the absolute edge of physical endurance and found that suffering more did not lead to wisdom. Then he sat under a Bodhi tree and he meditated, and he meditated, and he meditated, and he meditated. And he faced every demon his mind could throw at him. Fear, desire, doubt, rage, grief, temptation, illusion. He sat with all of it. He did not run. He did not fight. He simply watched. He simply breathed. He simply stayed. And in that sitting, in that extraordinary, courageous, quiet sitting, he became enlightened. He became the Buddha, the awakened one. Now, I am not here to tell you that you need to sit under a tree for 40 days. But I am here to tell you that what the Buddha discovered, the three core practices that flow from his enlightenment, these are not ancient relics. These are not museum pieces. These are living, breathing, transformative tools that are as relevant today as they were 2,500 years ago. More relevant, actually, because the world has never been louder. The distractions have never been more numerous. The anxiety has never been more widespread. The loneliness has never been more acute. And the antidote, the real deep sustainable antidote, has been sitting here all along, waiting for you. So let's talk about the first practice. The first pillar, the first tool, mindfulness. Sati in Pali, the ancient language of Buddhist scripture. Sati means awareness, it means presence. It means the radical, courageous, revolutionary act of being exactly where you are. Now I want to challenge you with something. I want you to think about how much of your day you actually spend in the present moment. Not in the past, not in the future, not in the replay of that argument you had 3 weeks ago, not in the rehearsal of the conversation you are going to have tomorrow, not in the scroll through someone else's highlight reel, not in the fantasy of the life you wish you were living. How much of your actual irreplaceable never coming back life do you spend here now fully present? For most people, the honest answer is terrifyingly small. Studies in psychology, and I am talking about Harvard studies, rigorous scientific research, have found that the human mind wanders approximately 47% of the time. Nearly half of your waking life. You are physically here but mentally somewhere else. You are eating dinner but thinking about work. You are listening to your child but planning tomorrow's schedule. You are in the most beautiful sunset of your life but thinking about what caption to put on Instagram. And here is the devastating truth that the same researchers discovered. A wandering mind is an unhappy mind. Not sometimes, consistently, reliably, regardless of what the mind is wandering to. Even pleasant thoughts, even daydreams. A mind that is not here is a mind that is suffering. The Buddha understood this 2,500 years before Harvard put it in a study. Mindfulness is not about emptying your mind. I cannot tell you how many times I've heard people say, I tried meditation. I failed. My mind kept thinking. Our mind kept thinking. And I always want to say, friends, your mind is supposed to think. That is what minds do. Mindfulness is not about stopping your thoughts. It is about changing your relationship with them. It is about becoming the sky instead of the weather. The weather still comes, the storms, the clouds, the lightning, but you are the sky. Vast, unchanging, unbroken. Let me tell you about a woman named Maria. Maria was a nurse. She worked 12-hour shifts in a busy hospital in Chicago. She had 3 kids. She was also caring for her aging mother who had dementia. And Maria was drowning. Not physically. She was functioning. She was showing up. She was doing all the things. But inside she was drowning. She told me once, she said, I feel like I am always rushing toward the next moment. Like the present moment is just an obstacle between me and where I need to be. Read that back. That is so many of us. The present moment as an obstacle, the now as something to get through so we can get to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing and the next. Until one day you are lying on your deathbed, wondering where your life went. Maria started practicing mindfulness, not for hours, not in some exotic retreat. She started with 5 minutes in the morning, sitting quietly following her breath, just breathing. And when her mind wandered, and it did constantly because she was a human being with a very full life, she gently, without judgment, without frustration, without self-criticism, brought it back to the breath, back to here, back to now. And over weeks and months, something extraordinary happened, not just in those 5 minutes. It started to bleed into the rest of her day. She started to actually taste her coffee in the morning. She started to actually hear her children's laughter, not as background noise, but as this incredible musical, precious sound. She started to be fully present with her patients at work, and she told me that patients started commenting on it. You really listen, they would say. You make me feel like I am the only person in the world. She was not doing anything more. She was doing the same things, but she was doing them a week. That is what mindfulness does. It does not add more time to your life. It adds more life to your time. Now here is where it gets really interesting, because mindfulness is not just about feeling peaceful. It is about seeing clearly. The Buddha taught that most of our suffering comes from delusion, from seeing things as they are not. We see ourselves as permanent, solid, fixed beings. We see our thoughts as facts. We see our emotions as commands. We see our pain as permanent and our joy as too brief. We see other people through the thick fog of our own projections and assumptions. Mindfulness cuts through the fog. When you are truly present, when you are genuinely paying attention, you start to see thoughts as just thoughts, not commands, not truth, just thoughts. You start to feel emotions as sensations that arise and pass. You start to see that nothing is as fixed and permanent as your anxious mind insists it is. There is a beautiful teaching in Buddhism, the image of a river. The Buddha says that you cannot step into the same river twice, because both the river and the person stepping into it have changed. Everything is in constant flow. Everything is impermanent. And when you truly, deeply, bodily understand impermanence, when it moves from being an intellectual concept to being a lived experience, it changes how you suffer. It changes how you cling. It changes how you love. Because you stop trying to freeze what is flowing and start learning to dance with the current. I want to tell you about a moment in my own life. There was a time when I was so afraid of losing what I had that I could not enjoy what I had. I had worked so hard to build my life, my career, my relationships, my sense of self, and I held on to all of it with white-knuckled terror. And that fear, that clinging, it poisoned everything it touched. Because the more tightly you hold something, the less you can feel it. The more desperately you grip a beautiful moment, the faster it slips through your fingers. Mindfulness taught me to hold things lightly, not without love, not with detachment or coldness or indifference, but with open hands. With a kind of gracious, grateful, wide open presence that says, I am here with you now, and this moment is enough, and when it changes, I will be here with that too. That is not resignation. That is not giving up. That is the deepest kind of strength I have ever encountered. The first practice is mindfulness. And I want to challenge you. Not someday, not when your life calms down, not when you have more time. Right now. Today. Before you sleep tonight, sit for 5 minutes. Just 5. Put your phone face down in another room. Sit comfortably. Close your eyes. Follow your breath in. Follow your breath out. When your mind wanders, and it will, gently come back. No drama, no judgment. Just back. Just here. Just now. Do that for 30 days and your life will not be the same. I promise you that with everything I have. But mindfulness is only the first practice, and we are just getting started. The second practice, and this is the one that changes your relationships, your community, your entire sense of what it means to be human, is compassion. In Sanskrit, the word is karuna. And in the Buddhist tradition, compassion is not a feeling. It is not a sentiment. It is not the warm glow you get when you see a sad puppy video on your phone. Compassion is a practice, it is a discipline. It is a way of moving through the world that has to be cultivated, developed, trained, just like a muscle. Now I want to ask you something honest, something that might make you uncomfortable. When was the last time you were compassionate with yourself? Not with other people, with yourself. When was the last time you made a mistake and instead of attacking yourself, instead of the relentless internal monologue of shame and self-criticism, you spoke to yourself the way a good friend would speak to you? With kindness, with understanding, with the simple recognition that being imperfect is part of being human. For most of us, the answer is almost never. We live in a culture that has weaponized self-criticism. We believe that being hard on ourselves is what makes us better. We believe that self-compassion is weakness, that it is self-indulgence, that if we are too kind to ourselves, we will become lazy and complacent and mediocre. And I want to challenge that belief directly. Because the research, and I mean decades of rigorous psychological research by people like Dr. Kristen Neff at the University of Texas, tells us the exact opposite is true. Self-compassion does not make you weaker. It makes you more resilient. It does not make you complacent. It makes you more motivated. People who practice self-compassion recover faster from failure. They are more willing to take risks. They are more honest about their mistakes because they are not paralyzed by shame. They are more persistent. They are more persistent. They are healthier. They live longer. They have better relationships. And the Buddha knew this 2,500 years ago. He taught that all compassionate practice begins with the self, because you cannot pour from an empty cup. Because the voice you use to speak to yourself becomes the filter through which you see the entire world. Because if you are at war with yourself, you will be at war with everyone else too. There is a practice in Buddhism called metta meditation, sometimes called loving kindness meditation. And it is one of the most powerful things I have ever encountered. The practice goes like this. You sit quietly. You bring yourself to mind, yourself as you are right now, with all your flaws and failures and fears and beauty and struggle and grace, and you send yourself wishes. You say silently from your heart, may I be happy, may I be healthy, may I be safe, may I live with ease. And if that feels awkward, and for many people it does, because we are so conditioned to criticize rather than to love, that awkwardness is the practice. You stay with it. You breathe through it. You keep offering kindness to yourself, even when some part of you resists. And then you expand. You bring to mind someone you love easily. A child, a parent, a dear friend. And you send them the same wishes. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be safe. May you live with ease. And then you expand further. A neutral person, someone you see regularly but do not know well. The barista who makes your coffee, the bus driver, the stranger walking down the street. May you be happy. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be safe. May you live with ease. And this is where it gets hard, and this is where it gets real, and this is where the transformation happens. You bring to mind someone you find difficult, someone who has hurt you, someone you are angry with, someone you have written off, dismissed, or despised. And you try, not perfectly, not completely, but you try to send them the same wishes. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be safe. May you live with ease. Because here is what Buddhism understands about hatred and resentment and bitterness that our culture has mostly forgotten. Holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Your resentment does not hurt the person you resent. It eats you alive. It narrows your world. It calcifies your heart. It keeps you permanently chained to the very person or experience you most want to be free from. Compassion. Real compassion. Not the sentimental version, but the disciplined, practiced, radical version. Compassion is not about excusing what happened. It is not about saying that harm was not harm. It is not about pretending that betrayal did not cut deep or that abuse did not leave scars. Compassion is about refusing to let your wound become your whole identity. It is about choosing. And I want to underline that word choosing because it is always a choice. choosing to see the suffering behind the behavior, choosing to recognize that every person who has ever hurt you was themselves hurting, that hurt people, always, without exception. I want to tell you about a man. His name does not matter, but his story does. He spent 8 years in prison for a crime he committed in his mid-20s. He was angry when he went in. He was dangerous. He had grown up in poverty and violence and had learned the only language that his environment had taught him: force. And for the first few years inside, he doubled down on that anger. He fought. He isolated. He burned with bitterness at his circumstances, at the system, at the world. And then, through a prison program that introduced inmates to Buddhist meditation, something shifted. A teacher came in, a small, quiet woman who must have been 70 years old. And she sat down with these men and she said something that broke something open inside him. She said, "Your anger is trying to protect you. It is trying to tell you that you matter, that you are worth defending, that what happened to you was not okay. Your anger is not your enemy, but it is not your home either. And I am here to help you find your home." He started meditating. He started practicing compassion, not for the people who had hurt him. That came later, much later. But first for himself. He started to grieve, not in a dramatic way, in a quiet, private, daily way. He started to feel the grief of the life he had not lived, of the potential that had been buried under years of survival and rage. He started to recognize himself not as a criminal, not as a number, not as a threat, but as a human being who had been profoundly failed and who had profoundly failed others in return. And something extraordinary happened. By the time he was released, he was a different person, not perfect, not without scars, but genuinely, recognizably transformed. He went on to start a program working with at-risk youth in his community. He now spends his days pouring compassion into young people who are exactly where he was 20 years ago. He has changed hundreds of lives. He did not change because someone fixed his circumstances. He changed because he changed his relationship with himself. He changed because he chose compassion over contempt, first for himself, and then for everyone around him. That is the power of the second practice. But compassion is not only about the grand gestures. It is not only about the dramatic transformations. It lives in the tiny moments of your everyday life. It lives in the pause before you snap at your partner. It lives in the breath you take before you respond to that infuriating email. It lives in the moment you choose to listen instead of waiting to speak. It lives in the decision to give someone the benefit of the doubt instead of assuming the worst. Compassion is a practice, a daily moment by moment, breath by breath practice. And the more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. The more it rewires your nervous system. The more it rewires your relationships. The more it rewires the world around you. Because compassion is contagious. When you meet someone with genuine kindness, not performed kindness, not manipulative kindness, but real, grounded, spacious kindness, it does something to them. It opens something. It reminds them of something they had forgotten. It plants a seed, and seeds matter, even when you cannot see them growing. There is a concept in Buddhism called interdependence, the teaching that nothing exists independently. Everything arises in relationship to everything else. The tree needs the rain, needs the cloud, needs the ocean, needs the sun. You need the farmer who grew your food and the person who drove the truck that brought it to your store and the millions of years of geological history that created the soil that grew the wheat. You are not separate from the world around you. You are woven into it inseparably, irrevocably. And when you truly feel that interdependence, when it moves from concept to lived experience, compassion becomes inevitable. Because cruelty toward another being becomes cruelty toward yourself. Because their suffering and your suffering are not separate. Because we are, underneath all the noise and division and tribalism, one great, interconnected, interdependent human family. I know that sounds idealistic. I know it can feel impossibly far from the reality of a world that often feels harsh and divided and cruel. But here is what I know about idealism. The people who have most transformed this world: Gandhi, Mandela, Dr. King, Mother Teresa, Aung San Suu Kyi, these were not naive dreamers. These were people of fierce, disciplined, unshakable principle who faced the worst of human cruelty and responded not with more cruelty, but with more compassion. And in doing so, they moved mountains. You may not move mountains, but you can move your mountain. You can transform the small world you inhabit. Your family, your neighborhood, your workplace, your friendships, through the daily courageous countercultural practice of compassion. Begin with yourself. Always begin with yourself. Because the relationship you have with yourself is the template for every other relationship in your life. The way you speak to yourself in the dark hours of the night, the story you tell yourself about who you are and what you deserve, that is the foundation. And you can change it. And you can change it. You can rebuild it. Not overnight, not without effort, but you can. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be safe. May you live with ease. Say that to yourself tonight and tomorrow and the day after until it starts to feel true. Now we have talked about mindfulness. We have talked about compassion. And now we come to the third practice, the one that in many ways binds all the others together, the one that is perhaps the most misunderstood and the most urgently needed in our current time. The third practice is wisdom. In Pali, the word is pana. And in the Buddhist tradition, wisdom is not knowledge. Let me say that again because this is so important and so often confused. Wisdom is not knowledge. We live in the information age. We have access to more knowledge than any human beings in the history of the world. We can answer almost any question in seconds. We can access thousands of years of human thought and discovery from a device in our pockets. We are drowning in information. And yet, look around you. Look at the state of the world. Look at the state of the world life. Has all that knowledge made us wiser? Has it made us more peaceful, more kind, more free? I think we know the answer. Knowledge is about accumulating facts. Wisdom is about understanding the nature of reality. Knowledge fills the head. Wisdom transforms the heart. Knowledge can be stored and retrieved. Wisdom has to be lived. You cannot download wisdom. You cannot consume your way to wisdom. You cannot binge watch your way to wisdom. Wisdom is earned through experience, through suffering, through sitting with difficulty, through honest self-examination, through the patient, humble, lifelong practice of paying attention. The Buddha's path to wisdom begins with what he called right view. Right view. And right view is essentially this: seeing things as they actually are, rather than as we want them to be or fear them to be. It means being willing to look at reality directly, without the filter of ego, without the distortion of wishful thinking, without the armor of denial. Armor. This is harder than it sounds, because our minds are extraordinary story-making machines. We do not experience reality raw. We experience the story we tell ourselves about reality. We experience our interpretation, our projection, our assumption, our fear, our hope. And most of the time, we are not even aware this is happening. We mistake the map for the territory. We mistake our thoughts about life for life itself. Wisdom begins the moment you see this. The moment you realize that you have been living in a story and that the story is not the whole truth. This is not a comfortable realization. It can feel terrifying, but it is the beginning of the most important freedom you will ever experience. Let me tell you about a teaching that has stayed with me for years. It is called the second arrow. The Buddha describes a scenario. Someone shoots you with an arrow. You feel pain. That is the first arrow. That is unavoidable. Pain is part of life. Illness is part of life. Loss is part of life. Loss is part of life. Failure is part of life. The first arrow is the unavoidable suffering of existence. But then what do? We immediately fire a second arrow at ourselves. We add suffering to suffering. We get sick and then we tell ourselves we are weak for getting sick. We fail and then we tell ourselves we are worthless for failing. We grieve and then we tell ourselves we should be over it by now. We feel anxious and then we feel anxious about being anxious. We get hurt and then we punish ourselves for having trusted. We are in pain and then we add shame about the pain and fear of the pain and resistance to the pain. The second arrow. And it hurts more than the first, always. Buddhist wisdom says you cannot always prevent the first arrow, but the second arrow is optional. It is always optional. It is always optional. And practicing wisdom means developing the capacity to see the second arrow coming. To notice, oh, there it is, the self-criticism, the catastrophizing, the shame, the blame, the story that this pain means something terrible about who I am or what my life will be. And when you see it, really see it clearly, the way mindfulness trains you to see clearly, you can make a different choice. You can choose not to fire the second arrow. You can sit with the first arrow. You can feel the first pain, which is real and valid and deserves acknowledgement, without adding the second, self-inflicted layer of suffering. This changes everything. I have watched this teaching change people's lives in a single conversation, not because it takes the pain away, but because it reveals how much of our pain is self generated, how much of our suffering is the product of our own relentless, unconscious, automatic second arrow firing. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And once you cannot unsee it, you have power you did not have before. Wisdom also lives in the understanding of karma. Now I know that word has been misappropriated by pop culture. That's karma. People say when something bad happens to someone who was rude to them. But the actual Buddhist teaching of karma is far more nuanced and far more empowering than that. Karma simply means cause and effect. Every action has a consequence. Every thought has an effect. Every word has a ripple. What you plant, you harvest. Not necessarily immediately. Not necessarily in an obvious, visible way. But the seeds always produce fruit. Always fruit. Always. And the liberating thing about this teaching is not the idea that bad people will get what they deserve. The liberating thing is the recognition that you are always planting. Right now, in this moment. With this thought, this word, this action, this choice, you are always planting, which means you always have agency. You always have power. You are not a passive victim of a random universe. You are a co-creator of your own experience. Every moment is a new seed. Every moment is a new beginning. That is not pressure. That is freedom. Let me tell you about wisdom in action. There is a Zen story, and I love this story because it is so deceptively simple. A monk goes to his teacher and says, "Master, I am plagued by anger. No matter what I do, I cannot overcome my anger. Please help me." And the teacher says, "Show me your anger." The monk pauses. "Right now I do not feel it," he says. "It comes and goes." And the teacher says, "Then it is not yours. If it were truly yours, you could show it to me whenever you wished. But since you cannot, it is merely a visitor, and you have been treating visitors as if they were the owner of the house. Sit with that for a moment. Your anger is a visitor. Your anxiety is a visitor. Your grief is a visitor. Your jealousy, your fear, your doubt, your shame. Visitors, real visitors. Not to be dismissed or denied, but visitors nonetheless. And you, the one who is aware of these visitors, the one watching them come and go, the one who can observe them without being consumed by them, you are the house. And the house is far more spacious than any visitor. This is wisdom, and it takes practice to reach it. It takes the daily discipline of mindfulness so that you have enough spaciousness to observe your own state. It takes the daily cultivation of compassion so that you can meet those states, even the ugly ones, even the shameful ones, with kindness rather than violence. And slowly, slowly, through practice and through patience and through a willingness to keep showing up even when it is hard, wisdom grows. The Buddha spoke of a noble eightfold path, 8 interconnected practices for living wisely. And while we do not have time today to go through all 8 in depth, the essence can be distilled simply. Right understanding, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. Notice that word, right, not perfect, not without error, right, aligned, intentional, moving in the direction of truth and kindness and freedom. You do not have to be perfect to walk this path. You have to be willing. You have to keep showing. You have to be honest enough to look at yourself clearly and compassionate enough to love what you see anyway. I want to talk about something that does not get discussed enough when we talk about wisdom. And that is the wisdom of impermanence as it relates to suffering. Because I think many of us intellectually understand that things change. But when we are in the middle of our worst moments, when we are in the darkest night, when we have lost what we love most, when we have failed in a way that feels catastrophic, when the pain is so large it seems to have no edges, in those moments, the knowledge that things change can feel like an insult. Like someone saying, "Don't worry, you won't feel like this forever." And wanting to scream at them, because forever is irrelevant when right now is unbearable. I know that feeling. I have been in that place. And I want to speak directly to you if you are there right now. Buddhist wisdom does not ask you to rush your suffering. It does not ask you to skip the grief or bypass the pain. It asks you to bring your whole presence to it, to sit with it as you would sit with a dear friend in the darkest hour. To say, "I am here. I'm not going anywhere. This is real. This matters. This is allowed to be as large as it is, and I will sit with you through it." That is not weakness. That is the bravest thing a human being can do. The Buddhist teacher Pema Chodron has a teaching about this that I return to again and again. She talks about the concept of groundlessness, the terrifying but ultimately liberating experience of having nothing solid to hold on to when the ground falls away, when the structures you built your life on collapse, when the identity you constructed crumbles. And she says, and I want you to really hear this, she says that groundlessness is not the problem. Our resistance to groundlessness is the problem. Because when we stop fighting to re-establish solid ground and instead learn to be comfortable with uncertainty, with not knowing, with the beautiful and terrifying impermanence of everything, that is when we discover what we actually are. Not what we have built, not what we have achieved, not what we own or control or can predict, but what we actually fundamentally, indestructibly are. And what are we? Consciousness, awareness, the capacity to experience, to love, to suffer, to learn, to grow. To be here, fully, completely, radically here, in this extraordinary and fleeting and irreplaceable thing called a human life. That is wisdom, not a destination, a direction, a way of orienting, a commitment to keep waking up. Now, I want to bring these three practices together. Because they are not separate. They are not three independent modules you can choose between. They form a trinity that is greater than the sum of its parts. Mindfulness without compassion can become cold. You can be very aware of your own and others' suffering without caring about it. Awareness alone does not transform. It only illuminates. You need the warmth of compassion to move from seeing to caring, from observing to connecting, from understanding to loving. Compassion without mindfulness can become sentimental and exhausting. It can collapse into what psychologists call compassion fatigue, the burnout that comes from giving from a depleted place, from caring so much for others that you forget to care for yourself, from feeling everything so intensely that you lose your center and your equilibrium. Mindfulness gives compassion a foundation. It gives you the space and the stability to care without being consumed. And wisdom is what gives both mindfulness and compassion their depth and their direction. Wisdom is the understanding that makes mindfulness meaningful, knowing why you are paying attention, what you are looking for, what reality you are learning to see clearly. Wisdom is the understanding that makes compassion sustainable, knowing that suffering is universal, that all beings want to be happy and are trying in the only ways they know how. That kindness is never wasted even when it is not immediately recognized. Together, mindfulness, compassion, wisdom, these three practices form the foundation of a life that is genuinely free, not free from difficulty, not free from pain, not free from the inevitable losses and failures and confusions that are woven into the fabric of being human. But free within all of that, free in the way the sky is free even when clouds cover it, untouched in the way the ocean floor is untouched even when the surface storms rage. That is what you are working toward. That is what these practices are pointing to. Sue. And I want to address something that I know some of you are thinking. Because I have given a lot of talks, I have sat with a lot of people. And I know the question that is forming in the back of some of your minds right now. It sounds something like, this all sounds beautiful. But my life is really hard. My problems are real. My circumstances are genuinely difficult. I am not just suffering from bad thinking. I am suffering from real concrete external challenges. I am struggling with money, with illness, with relationship breakdown, with discrimination, with grief that is fresh and raw and enormous. Is this talk really for me? Are these practices really going to help when the problems are this real? And I want to answer that question with everything I have. Yes, especially then, because here is what I know about external circumstances. I have watched people in the most devastating circumstances imaginable maintain a quality of inner peace and dignity and courage that left everyone around them stunned and inspired. And I have watched people with every external advantage imaginable, wealth, health, success, love, be completely undone by their own minds, completely imprisoned by anxiety and fear, and the relentless suffering of a mind that has never been trained. The external world will always be what it is, unpredictable, sometimes generous, sometimes brutal, beyond your control in ways that can feel infuriating. But your inner world, the quality of your attention, the depth of your compassion, the clarity of your wisdom that is available to you right now, in this moment, regardless of your bank account, regardless of your diagnosis, regardless of what someone did to you or took from you or failed to give you, Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived the Nazi concentration camps, which represent perhaps the most extreme external suffering imaginable, wrote something that I consider among the most important words ever written by a human being. He said that even in the most constrained, brutal circumstances, there remains one freedom that can never be taken away: the freedom to choose one's attitude, the freedom to choose how we respond to what happens to us. That freedom is the freedom these three practices cultivate. Not by making you indifferent to external circumstances, not by encouraging you to be passive in the face of injustice, but by giving you an unassailable inner ground from which you can engage with anything that life brings. These practices will not solve your financial problems overnight. They will not heal your body magically. They will not bring back what you have lost, but they will change who you are in relationship to all of those things. And from that changed relationship, different choices become possible. Choices become possible. Different responses emerge. Different paths open up that you could not see before because you were too caught in the storm to see the sky. I want to tell you about something that I have observed over years of working with people. There is a pattern. It is so consistent, it has almost become predictable to me. People who begin these practices, mindfulness, compassion, wisdom, not only experience better inner lives, they also over time build better outer lives. Their relationships improve. Not because they have fixed everything and resolved every conflict and found the perfect partner, but because they are genuinely more present, more kind, more honest, more real. And presence and kindness and honesty and realness are magnetic. They draw people closer. They build trust. They build trust. They create the conditions for genuine intimacy and genuine community. Their work improves, not because they suddenly become more talented or more ambitious, but because they are more focused, more creative, less distracted by anxiety and self-doubt, more willing to take risks and learn from failures and keep going. Their health improves because chronic stress, the stress of a mind that is constantly fighting with reality, constantly at war with the present moment, is the single greatest driver of illness that we know of. And when the mind relaxes even a little, the body follows. It is not magic. It's not coincidence. It is a natural consequence of aligning yourself with reality, with what is, rather than what you fear or wish or regret. And from that alignment, moving forward with clear eyes and an open heart. I want to give you something practical to take with you today, because I believe in practicality. I believe in making the ancient accessible. So here are three concrete practices, one for each of the three pillars, that you can begin today. Not someday, today. For mindfulness, the practice of the conscious breath. Throughout your day, and I mean throughout, not just in a designated meditation session, take 3 conscious breaths, 3 times a day to start. Morning, midday, evening. Just 3 breaths where your entire attention is on the breath. In, out, in, out, in, out. Feel your chest rise. Feel the air move through your nostrils. Feel the pause at the top of the in-breath. Feel the release. 3 breaths fully present. That is it. And it is not about having the perfect circumstances or the perfect body or the perfect relationships or the perfect mental health history or the perfect past. It is about this moment, this breath, this choice, the small, irreplaceable, never coming back moment of being alive or to love. Mindfulness says, be here in all the fullness and texture and reality of right now. Not the story of now, not the memory of before or the anticipation of later. Now, this air, this body, this heartbeat, this extraordinary and unrepeatable now. Compassion says, be kind. Be kind to yourself first, without apology, because you have been through things that deserve recognition and tenderness. And then let that kindness expand to the people closest to you who are also struggling in the only ways they know how. And then further, ever further, to the great and suffering and beautiful and broken world. Wisdom says, see clearly, see the impermanence, see the interconnection. See the second arrows. See the stories you have been mistaking for reality. See with the growing clarity that comes from practice, who you actually are beneath all the conditioning and the fear and the noise. See the sky beneath the weather, the ocean beneath the waves, the silence beneath the sound. These 3 things, presence, kindness, clarity, mindfulness, compassion, wisdom, sati, karuna, pana, ancient words for timeless truths. They are not asking you to become someone else. They are asking you to become more fully who you already are. Underneath the defenses and the armoring and the performance and the striving and the endless exhausting effort to be enough, you are already enough. You are already enough. You have always been enough. There is something in you that knows this even when everything else is screaming otherwise. There is something in you that has never been broken, never been permanently damaged, never been beyond redemption or healing or growth. The practices are just ways of remembering, ways of coming home, again and again and again and again. The Zen teacher Shunryo Suzuki said, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are few. Come to your life with a beginner's mind. Come to your breath with a beginner's mind. Come to your relationships, your work, your grief, your joy, all of it, with the fresh, open, curious, humble mind of someone who is always willing to learn, always willing to be surprised, always willing to discover that the truth is larger and more generous and more beautiful than any story you have told yourself about it. You are not too old for this. You are not too damaged. You are not too busy. You are not too busy. You are not too cynical or too rational or too set in your ways. The human nervous system is plastic. It changes in response to experience at any age, in any condition. The human heart is resilient. It can grow again even after it has been broken, and sometimes it grows back larger than before. I believe in your capacity to change, not just slightly, not just incrementally. I believe in the possibility of radical transformation, not because of anything magical, but because I have seen it happen. I have seen the most hardened, most shut down, most broken people discover through patient practice and courageous honesty a life that is genuinely, sustainably, deeply beautiful. Not a life without pain, never that, but a life where the pain is met with presence instead of panic. A life where loss is honored rather than suppressed. A life where failure is a teacher rather than a verdict. A life where joy, when it comes in its fleeting and precious way, is fully felt rather than half experienced through the glass of distraction. That life is available to you. It is not waiting in the future. It is not contingent on external circumstances finally aligning. It is available here. Now, in this very moment, through the simple, radical, life-changing choice to pay attention, to be kind, to see clearly, mindfulness, compassion, wisdom. Three ancient practices for one extraordinary human life. Your life. So I will leave you with this. Tonight, when you get home or wherever you are going after this, before you pick up your phone, before you turn on the television, before you lose yourself in the noise again, sit for 5 minutes, for 5 minutes. Just sit. Follow 3 breaths. Send yourself one moment of genuine kindness and ask yourself one question. What story am I telling myself about my life? And is it the whole truth? That's the beginning. That right there. Those 5 minutes, that question. That is the first step on a path that has no end. And that becomes more beautiful the further you walk it. The Buddha on the night of his enlightenment is said to have touched the earth. Just touched it. One hand, palm down, fingers spread. And in that gesture he was saying, I am here. I am grounded. I am real. I am present. And I am free. You can be free too. Not someday. Not if the circumstances change. Here. Not if you become perfect. As you are, touch the earth. Feel the ground beneath. Know that you are here, alive, breathing, capable of change, worthy of love, deserving of peace. Know that 2,500 years of human wisdom are reaching forward through time and placing these three tools in your hands. Use them. Your life is waiting for you to wake up. And I believe, with everything I am and everything I have seen and everything these ancient teachings have shown me, I believe that you are ready. Thank you.